Hey, everybody. All right. So just so you know, if you want to do karaoke later, some Drupal stuff, you might be able to talk me into it. So this is robustness and chaos, the evolution of Drupal's primary menu. And that's me. That's my daughter, Millie, and my puppy, Dexter. I work at AVB Digital, which is company that does federal type websites. I'm working on the Small Business Administration's website right now. And I've been doing Drupal and websites for a very long time. So I am the primary developer on the Olivero theme. So I'll explain kind of what that is if y'all don't know. But let me talk what I want your takeaways to be from this right here. Is I want you to kind of learn and evaluate your website's navigation for accessibility, and understand like some common navigation problems and solutions, and how to fix those, and dispel the myth that websites can't be beautiful as well as highly accessible. What's not listed here, I don't think, unless there's a number 5, is that like I want you to take away that Olivero, which has a like you're using it, it seems kind of straightforward, but there's a lot of thought that goes into this, like a whole bunch. And I'm going to walk you through that. And it's going to be exciting and boring at the same time, so be prepared. Everybody sit down and go through that. So like if you're new to Drupal, you're probably thinking like, why do we need a new theme? Why do we need new navigation? So we're all familiar with Bartik. Bartik was developed when Internet Explorer 8 was the primary browser. Like it served us well for a long time, but it's getting a little dated looking, you know, and that's a problem. So this is what Olivero looks like. And Olivero, in my opinion, is beautiful. It looks good. And you can kind of see the navigation at the top and how that works. And you can see how the mobile navigation works. And this is what we're going to talk about. And like, holy cow, Drupal out of the box supporting 2 layers of navigation. Like, welcome to Drupal 10, but yay. I mean, welcome to 2010, but yay, you know. So when we're creating this menu system, like we have, of course, a number of goals. You know, it needs to be usable, it needs to be highly accessible, and it needs to be robust. And when I'm talking about usable, it doesn't just need to work. It needs to work well. It needs to look pretty. It needs to be gorgeous. I want people, when they download Drupal and install Drupal, I want them to be like, holy cow, this is cool. This is modern. This is awesome. I want them to have that warm, fuzzy feeling. You know, so we have like the submenus need to open on hover. Like I like the idea of click to open, but I also want it on hover because honestly, clicking, sometimes I get lazy and I don't want to click, you know, because that's just me. But it obviously needs to work on click and touch. It needs to be very highly accessible. Drupal core has a core accessibility gate where it needs to meet the WCAG AA compliance. And it's not going in if it doesn't do that. But more than that, we want it to work. This theme is going to be in front of like tens to hundreds of thousands of people. And many of those people will need accessibility technology to navigate this. And it needs to work perfectly. Any other type of screen reader or assistive technology. It also needs to work in forced colors mode. Forced colors mode is like Windows high contrast. That is a frequent something that people overlook, and that's something that this menu we take care about. And when we're talking about making it robust, it just doesn't need to be. It needs to be mobile friendly, of course. It needs to work on pointer, tap, and hybrid devices, and any device in between. It needs to support a large number of navigation items because you know your content editors are going to intentionally try to screw up your design because that's what content editors do. So thank you, everybody. And of course, like it needs to support like multilingual. It needs to support right to left languages. So like Arabic and Hebrew, they read from the right side and then this way. We support that. It works. And we also support non-JavaScript environments. This isn't quite a core gate, but in my mind, like if you're loading, if anyone has ever had conference Wi-Fi, I don't know if you have, it's horrible. And sometimes resources don't load, and that might be your JavaScript. And I want this to be lightweight. I want this to load quick. I want, if your JavaScript, if you're browsing through like some anonymous proxies because you're in some country where that doesn't allow dissent or something, I want you to be able to use this menu if you don't have JavaScript enabled. That type of stuff is important for me. On top of that, we Drupal 9, which is where all this development is, we support Internet Explorer 11, which has the big crying emoji there. So that adds a whole level of complexity on that we have to support going into this. So let's talk about how we got there. I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to tell how we started creating this menu system. I'm going to go through a bunch of Drupal issues. At the bottom of the screen, you can even find the issue numbers if you want to look at the discussion and the copy and paste the code and all that type of stuff. It's all open source, and I encourage you to do that. And I'm going to tell you about, at the end, I'm going to tell you about some next steps that I'm excited that we could even, like, hopefully, like, expand on some of this stuff. So I initially started working on Olivero, when does this say? September 15, 2019. And this started with just some static HTML. You know, I wanted static HTML, I think I might have used Sass, I don't even know, and vanilla JavaScript. And my goal is just to do kind of a proof of concept, validate this, get it in front of people, and have them poke holes in it before I even have to screw around with Drupal's theme layer. So working on the menu, the first thing that we knew, I wanted it to open on hover, you know? So, and then we were using focus within to navigate the submenus. And click buttons for mobile. So you go into mobile button, there would be a click to expand. So this was pretty basic right here. And it works. You can, but it wasn't quite right. So one of the first issues that we ran into within this proof of concept is that there's no indication that there's a submenu. You know, in addition to that, if a user's navigating the menu system via a keyboard, they have to go through the whole menu if they want to go to the end, and that's an issue. So what we ended up doing is we ended up just kind of taking that mobile plus minus button and kind of making it functional at desktop widths. You know, so you could navigate, you could tab forward, tab past it, you hit enter when you're there, and then you can tab down. And then, you know, we added like, you know, a little bit of JavaScript to kind of open and close that on hover. And we added a couple ARIA attributes, ARIA controls and ARIA expanded, our accessibility ARIA attributes that will inform any type of assistive technology that, hey, this menu is open, or this button controls something that's open, this button controls something that's closed, you know? And then we took out that whole focus within, at least for environments that have JavaScript. And this goes into what's called a link disclosure pattern. So within Drupal, I'm sure you all have seen where you have a hyperlink, and then, but underneath the hyperlink, there is a submenu. So, but what if you click on the hyperlink, it will navigate you to a submenu. And it's kind of like really a little weird. So this, the link disclosure pattern has the hyperlink on the left-hand side, and then the button which is the chevron right there, will toggle the submenu. And this works pretty well if users want to have a hyperlink at the top. There's a ARIA controls and ARIA expanded attributes that we already talked about that tell the assistive tech that, hey, it's open or closed. And you can also use the escape key on your keyboard to close that menu and get out of that. And so this is pretty cool. Of course, we replaced this plus with a chevron, which of course looks a lot better. So on mobile menus, there's an option within Olivero's settings. So if you go into the theme settings, there's a little checkbox that says enable mobile menu at all widths. So this is like really cool if you have like, say, like 10,000 menu items and they won't fit across the top. But at the same time, what happens is the menu kind of gets in front of everything. And we need to make sure that if something gets focus, like if you tab to something and something gets focus, it's visible on the screen, and that's a WCAG success criterion. So we do this by implementing what's called a focus trap, and the focus trap means if you're in the submenu, which is in front of everything, and you're tabbing around, you cannot tab outside of that, and until you hit the escape button or something else. So probably about 2-ish years ago, we actually moved out of the proof of concept phase, which took several months, and we moved into a regular contrib theme called Olivero. And so we're not yet in Drupal core, but we're Drupal. You know, we're messing around with the Drupal theme system. We're writing a little bit of PHP. We're writing Twig, and we're using things like Drupal behaviors. So one of the first things that we had to do is we have to support no link and button. So I wanna show hands here. Who here in this audience knows that when you're creating a menu item, you can type in like angle brackets button? So for the recording, there's 2 people in maybe a room of like 80 or so. So now, just so you know, like you can go into a menu item, and instead of typing like front page or a / or a link to something, you can type in button, and it will create a button element. Outside of that, you can also type in no link, and no link will generate a span element. And that's kind of cool for accessibility reasons, right? Because in my mind, if you have a top-level navigation item and there's a submenu under there, that top-level navigation item should be a disclosure button. And you know, you hit it or you hover it or whatever, and it discloses what's underneath. So of course, Olivero needs to support that. You know, so we have some. So this is like the markup that it generates right here. You see like the link disclosure pattern at the top, and then you have more of I guess this is no link right here, the second one, and at the bottom we have more of a traditional like button disclosure, you know, a button disclosure pattern. The whole thing is a button, and to me that's kind of a little bit more optimal. But that, of course, once again, is up to the site builder, the users, to create that. We can't control that. So this is very similar to the link disclosure pattern that I talked about earlier. Escaping will close the menu, and then also if you tap outside or you click outside, it'll close the menu. So an issue, you know, like at this point, we're trying to get this in front of a lot of people. We're trying to get it in front of a lot of accessibility maintainers. One of the first issues that we got into is we have this like hidden text in there in the link disclosure buttons that basically say toggle sub-navigation, you know, and what happens is, like, you know, if you have a screen reader going through, tabbing through, it'll say toggle sub-navigation. But we realized that could be a little confusing because all of them say the same thing. They all say toggle sub-navigation, and there's no indication of what sub-navigation it's toggling. So this is pretty straightforward. We just outputted the text of the button or the text of whatever item that is. So instead of saying toggle sub-navigation, it now says web form sub-navigation or feature sub-navigation or whatever your item sub-navigation is. And we even talked about like calling it something different than navigation, like calling it to menu and stuff, but we figured like maybe navigation would be more translatable. But I don't think it would probably matter too much as long as it's understandable. We had an issue like going back to like kind of not supporting non-JavaScript environments. Those ARIA attributes that we're adding right there, they really don't do anything unless JavaScript's enabled. So if JavaScript's disabled, the ARIA attributes are kind of a lie. You know, it says ARIA disabled, or I mean it says like ARIA expanded false, but there's no way without JavaScript to make that true. So what we ended up doing is we ended up hiding these buttons from assistive technology unless JavaScript's enabled. So JavaScript gets it down there, and it will kind of remove the ARIA hidden and remove the tab index, and at that point it will be fully accessible. So that kind of works pretty well. We have a ensure text spacing compliance issue right here, and what that means is like end users can do have their own styles on their browser that they might use to override. They might make their text larger, or they might add some text spacing or font spacing or something in there. We need to make sure that it works with that. And so we did a lot of testing with line height and increasing text spacing and things like that. And the testing for that went pretty well. The way that we did that is there's a bookmark marklet right there that kind of just like adds to JavaScript that sets these styles. But pretty much you can copy and paste this type of stuff, throw it in developer tools or something like that. But you can see it's adjusting your line height, word spacing. So what that means is our menu system does not rely on those styles. You know, it's very robust. You can kind of throw whatever the heck you want at it, and it should still work. And if you zoom in, you Command plus or Control plus or whatever, it still needs to work. There should be no point where it does not work. And yeah, so forced colors mode or high contrast mode. So Windows High Contrast is kind of like an implementation of forced colors. Forced colors will override your browser, your author styles, the styles that I write. It will override things like background colors and things like that. And when you're thinking of forced colors mode, it's not just this where you have a light on dark theme. People can have dark on light themes and things like that. People might create a custom color scheme like fuchsia on red, you know, and we need to support that. That's the type of thing that does not come to top of mind when you're thinking of accessibility, but there's a lot of care and TLC that kind of goes into this to support it. It's not just Internet Explorer and Edge, but we also did testing with Firefox and Chrome in this. And I can talk your ear off about forced colors. Not all CSS properties work in forced colors. Like, as I said, like background color and box shadows, they will go away. If you're using box shadow to set focus states, that's going to be an issue because that's going to go away. You need to test this so you can find stuff. SVGs and background images are a little problematic depending on the browser. Like modern versions of Microsoft Edge do not work using current color for fills and SVGs like you would expect. There's a good resource kind of at the bottom right there that I'm linking to, and I'll send out the links to my slides and stuff afterwards if you're more interested in forced colors. During this whole process, I introduced a security vulnerability while we were still in contrib, a cross-site scripting vulnerability, right? So this is like kind of like some simplified code right here, where basically I needed to wrap the title of the link in a span so we could have some cool hover effects. You know, everybody likes cool hover effects, but the angle brackets and everything for the span were being outputted on the screen. Well, that's pretty easy to fix. I just went ahead and added this like little raw filter in there. So the problem is now if people type in JavaScript in there, JavaScript will execute, you know? So that is a potential security vulnerability because as soon as like you allow someone to execute their JavaScript, they can do all types of funky stuff. They could like navigate you into the admin panel if you have those permissions or do something like that, and that's a big deal. It was pretty straightforward to fix, and the reason I bring this up is because I want y'all to like be aware of this. This is important stuff, and it's easy to do. Everybody can introduce security vulnerabilities because I totally did. The solution is not to use the raw filter. I think with Twig 2 it's like called verbatim. So if you ever see like raw or verbatim, like a little warning flag should go off. You need to pay a little bit of special attention to that to make sure you're not doing something like I did right here. So there's ways around it. You know, like y'all know in Drupal and in Twig, there's a million ways to do everything. We just did it a different way, and it worked perfectly. So here is what it should look like. If I type in script alert, I actually want it to show up there. And that's what it does now, and it does not execute JavaScript. So finally, we actually moved into Drupal core. This is like a big monumentous like occasion for me because I was not like really a Drupal core developer, and I always looked at Drupal core developers high up on a pedestal, you know, and in their ivory towers smoking cigars and stuff, and like so I'm like, all right, you know, I did this, And now I get to go up and have those cigars. But like, it was like, holy cow, like, this is in there. This is a big deal, you know, and I was so happy. This is probably about 1.5 years ago at this point, and went into Drupal core as experimental. And so what experimental means is it's in core, but it's not perfect, you know. And if you try enable, it'll say, hey, this is experimental, you know. So that's pretty cool. So one cool thing with getting into Drupal core is things move a lot slower. And so I say that's good because it gets like a lot of eyes on there, you know. There was a lot of issues, like accessibility issues, that were discovered because once we had Drupal core accessibility maintainers looking in here, these people are like extremely, extremely impressively smart. And let me tell you, I personally learned so much about this type of stuff going through this process, and so I encourage you all to do it. But they started putting their eyes on this, and they found problems, you know. And so at this point, all right, let's kind of take care of this. So this particular issue that we have right here is a focus visible issue. So there's a success criterion that says if an item has focus, you need to be able to see what it is, you know, and that's like a hard and set rule right there. So this particular issue is if something has focus and you move your mouse out, then you can't see where that focus is. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, this is an edge case, no one's ever going to do that, but you know they're going to do it, you know. So like, we need to take care of this, you know. So it was kind of straightforward. What we do is we check. You can see like line 128 right there. Check, say, hey, if the document active element, that's the focus element, if it's active and open and stuff like that, don't close it when you do the mouse out. It's kind of straightforward, but you need to know. You know, knowing is half the battle. Does anybody ever watch G.I. Joe? That was like a thing. Thank you, Martin, for raising your hand and validating me. So we had another issue. We needed to have the sub-navigation close on blur. So blur is like almost like the opposite of focus. If focus moves away, we need to close those sub-navigation items because, to tell you the truth, something underneath might have focus. And at that point, once again, we're going to have a focus visible issue. So that's a little bit of work, a little bit of stuff. It also prevents menus from overlapping each other, you know. So this was, once again, like kind of not a terrible difficult thing to do, but it's just one of those things that we had to know to do it. We set a little bit of a timeout so it doesn't close immediately, but it does close, just in case people go and come back and stuff like that. Yeah, so ran into this one issue that was like a little bit funky, you know. It took like if I had the desktop navigation loaded on a mobile device, let's call it like a large iPad or something like that, it took 2 taps to open up the menu. Hey, that's kind of weird, you know. So you can kind of see on the right-hand side here, I'm using like Chrome developer tools to kind of emulate it. And you can see like I tap once, nothing happens, and then I tap again and it opens. And then it kind of works like you would expect. So what's going on? So did a little bit of debugging in here, and what we found is that the tap, it will trigger the mouse over event, which of course will activate that submenu, but it also triggers the click event, which will then deactivate the submenu. So that submenu gets activated and deactivated all within like, you know, a CPU cycle, so you never see it. So if you tap it again, it already has the focus, so it already has the mouse over, so at that point it'll trigger only the click event, which will activate the menu properly. So this one was kind of interesting right here. So like the first thing, as a developer, what do? You just Google crap, right? So like you Google it, and I found this article that says supporting both touch event and mouse event, and this looks really straightforward. And it basically says like, if you have a touch start event, don't do anything else and just open up the subnav. And hey, that kind of works, right? But, there's always a but. There's another success criterion called pointer cancellation. And what that means is you need to be able to kind of back up your actions, you know. So like an example of this is Y'all like ever go to like you're on maybe an e-commerce forum and you're about to hit that submit button and you press down in your mouse and then you're like, oh crap, I forgot this one thing, and then you kind of like hold that mouse button down and drag it somewhere else, and then you release and you're like, please don't submit the form. That is a textbook example of pointer cancellation right there. So this is the type of thing that needs to be thought about. This needs to occur, you know. So we need to account for that. So and that first solution that's referenced on MDN does not account for that. So second attempt right here. So at this point, what we're doing is we're going to listen for the touch event, and then if there is a touch event, we kind of add like a little bit of a CSS class to remember, and then we basically don't do anything on the mouse over event, and then we'll just handle the click event, and the click event will just go like normal. So you're not going to have that double, you know. And you're thinking, hey, that's a perfect solution, but it's not just touch and mouse devices. This is like, I forget what this is called. Like this is like a pointer tool that's included in Mac OS. And it allows, like, this is going really fast right here, but what it does is it slowly kind of scans your screen in one axis. And then you hit another button, it scans your screen in another axis. Then you hit another button, and then it kind of zooms in, and then it does it again. And it allows it's an assistive technology that allows a user to be able to kind of, you know, operate a website and click on something. This type of stuff is important, you know. And there's other things like hover-capable styluses and stuff like that. And what we were worried about is we were worried that this solution wouldn't work with that. So the solution that we ended up kind of working with right here is a little bit more complex than you would initially think. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like, you look at Olivero's menu and it's just a normal drop-down menu, but there's all this stuff that you got to kind of think about. And it's a little overwhelming, right? Is anyone like overwhelmed and be like, oh crap, I never thought of any of this? Yeah, well that's me like right now. But like, and I have plans to help out everybody too, and I'll talk about that. So the solution here is to kind of go down the route that we were going. It says if it's a touch event, add a little CSS class, and then if it's a mouse over event, don't do anything if there's that CSS that class is present right there. But then we add an is active mouse over CSS class, and then we open up the submenu, and then we set a timeout for a half a second, and then we remove that is active mouse over, and that kind of gives those point scanning tools an option to kind of like zoom in and do that, because that's going to take a little bit longer. If it's a click event, the click event won't do anything if the is active mouse over class is present. All this logic is a little bit confusing, but if you sit back and you kind of think about it, it kind of makes a little bit of sense, and it works really well. Like, the only thing is, if you intentionally want to open and close the submenu within a half a second, it's not going to work. But you know, if you want to do that, too bad. So this is an interesting thing right here. So the focused submenu item should always be in the viewport, right? So one thing about like Olivero is we have this fixed header at the top, and what that means is if you have a very long submenu and that fixed header is stickied at the top right there, and you have like maybe like a short computer, like a 13-inch MacBook or 13-inch laptop or something like that, that menu might overflow to the bottom. And you can never get to those items. You could, and if you focus those items, you can't see what's focused right here. And once again, that's a violation of our good old friend Focus Visible. So the solution for this was a little bit of a CSS solution right here, and we set the max height of that container right there, and we kind of set it a little bit shorter than the viewport and things like that. And then we have the overflow auto, and what happens is it creates that little scroll bar right there. So no matter what, even if you're on a very, very short screen, you can still kind of scroll down to those, even if they're wide. And I think that's kind of cool. This limits us in the future if we want to have like a flyout menu coming out to the side to support tertiary navigations or something like that. We're not going to be able to do that because of that overflow. But I don't think we're ever going to do that because honestly, like, I don't like those, and like, it seems to work pretty well. Mobile menu obscures page after clicking the anchor link. This was a one that a user found, like right here, right? So the hyperlinks, or the menu system right here, we had a built-in assumption that we didn't realize. We assumed that after you click an item, the page would go somewhere else and navigate and reload the page. That's not always the case. What if you are trying to navigate to an anchor item in the current page? It will not reload the page. But the menu stays open. It will obscure that menu item. Once again, this is a violation of focus visible and things like that. This is a great example of like people, like we don't control the content right here. Everybody's gonna have their own little things, but we need to accommodate it right here. So this was kind of a, once again, like once we knew about this, it was kind of an easy solution. And what this does is it says, if the link that is clicked starts with a hash or contains the current page followed by a hash, at that point we close the menu. So if you have an anchor link and it links to an anchor link, at that point it'll jump down to the anchor link, it'll close the menu at mobile. Everybody's happy and everything works. Like that was kind of cool.
Thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Was that yours? Thank you. Like that's awesome. And like I want to really say like we would have not found that. That's like the type of thing you don't think about, you know? This is an example of us not testing properly. So you know how I was mentioning the focus trap? You should be able to tab around, and you shouldn't be able to escape that. Well, you should also be able to shift tab. You shift tab, and it kind of tabs backwards. We found a bug where if you shift tab, it would escape out of the focus trap, like a puppy out of the backyard, running amok. And like that's an issue. It's once again a violation of focus visible, and once again the solution isn't like terribly complex if you know JavaScript and stuff, but it's an example of someone needs to find this bug and test it, and we need to thoroughly test. And if you were to ask me on the day before this discovered, like, hey, did you thoroughly test? I'd be like, heck yeah, I thoroughly tested. No, I don't. This is a new one that well, no, this was an old one. I'm going to kind of go into this right here. We're kind of nearing the end. So, like, what if you want to be in a desktop, but there's like someone, once again, content editors kind of try to screw you over, and then they input a whole bunch of stuff. Well, it overflows, it can cause focus visible issues, all that. So we ended up kind of just adding a single CSS property in there, flex wrap, so it wraps, you know, and it looks like that. But like this is ugly, you know, like it doesn't look good, you know, and this is actually what it currently is right now. I'm going to tell you about how we're fixing that. But this doesn't look good. But like there are certain cases where like where a user might have like a medium amount, but then they're kind of narrowing the screen and it could wrap, you know, and that's kind of an issue. And so we have a cool solution that. It looks all complicated, but I'm going to walk you through it in a second. But it's kind of like lightweight on the browser. So like long story short, what I want it to do is I want it to, as soon as we get to the point where it's going to like wrap, I just want to transition to the mobile menu. You know, that's cool. Now, luckily for us, we already have like the styling built in because all we need to do is just add a CSS class onto the body and it transitions into that is always mobile menu type thing. But what we need to do is we need to know when it does that. So we're using a cool thing called resize observer, and this is not yet committed, but it'll go in pretty quick. And resize observer, like it's kind of like it doesn't like make your computer's fan turn on, if that makes sense. You know, like the last thing I want to do is like force the browser to do relayouts and all this crap to figure out, you know, on or attach an event listener on every time you move it around, check stuff. So this is pretty cool. And what resize observer will do is it will basically fire an event and it'll tell you when the size of something changes, right? So we attach that to the navigation, you know, wrapper thing, and we say if the size changes and the height gets larger, hey, at that point we know it's wrapping, right? So we know that. And at that point, we know to add that CSS class and transition it. But we also need to know if we make it big again, we need to kind of get out of that. So we remember the screen width at that point too, and then we set like a little like media query event listener, and we say like if we get larger than that, then transition back to that. And this thing, like, it honestly like works really good, and I'm super, super excited about this solution, because this is one that I had been like bumming around in my head about this. I was like, there's nothing good for this. I don't know how to fix this, and it just kind of came to me. And I was like, well, I wonder if I do that, and then I got it kind of working, and there's a couple things. Right now, I still need to write tests for it, but I have an idea on how to do that. Speaking of testing, it's important to test on real devices. So here I am on my old iPhone. This is my late iPhone. It died in a river. So it was just like, this is like not an accessibility issue. But what happens on an iPhone, because you know, if you're a front-end developer, you have this like kind of love-hate and mostly hate relationship with Safari. And when you reload the page, it would like have that like really funky like menu slide out thing. And you don't want to see that when the page reloads. That's just awkward and clunky. I do not want Drupal to be awkward and clunky more than it already is. So this was an easy fix. Once again, we just like changed around and like some translates and positioning, and then Safari decided to work nicely, and it kind of worked really well. The hardest part is finding the bugs. We did some testing with the National Federation of the Blind, and I'm super proud about this. And they gave us this like really great quote that I can throw up on slides such as this. And it was so validating to have real users who use assistive technology and screen readers, who know how it's supposed to work, say positive things. And so I'm super, super excited about this. And I'm going to read this just for anyone, you know, that might be blind. You know, it says, Olivero is very well done and low vision accessible. I could not find any issues with contrast, focus, scaling. The forms are well done, and the content is easy to find and navigate. Yay! That was awesome. Thank you. So throughout the whole process, we have a demo up that you can check out anytime, and I refresh it probably like once every couple weeks, and that's it right there. This is Drupal 9. If you tag on a 10 at the end, it'll show you the Drupal 10 version. The Drupal 10 version of Olivero is awesome because we don't support IE. We can properly use things like CSS variables, and we have like, we're going to be able to do color changing. That is like this close to getting in, you know, and it's going to automatically build a palette. It's going to be so cool, and I'm super excited about this. So like, let's talk about like what next. Like I already talked about color changing. We're going to support dark modes at some point, and I also want to have like a cool like design for like maybe a language switcher. There's all types of cool things in there. It's going to be the default theme for Drupal 10 come hell or high water. Maybe for 9.4, I'm not quite sure, but honestly, Drupal 10 is. That's what I'm excited about. We're even thinking about like supporting like secondary colors outside of like the, you know, in addition to the blue or something like that. Something that's not here that I'm excited about is there's something in Drupal 10 coming in called a theme generator. And so if y'all know about subtheming, typically with subtheming you say like, I want to have a parent theme and it's going to inherit everything, and then I'm going to change a few things. Olivero does not officially support subtheming. And the reason is because if we officially supported subtheming, we couldn't like really start changing around the markup because your CSS might rely on that markup. That markup comes like a de facto API. So Drupal 10 is getting around this by creating a what's called a theme generator, and there's a theme already there called starter kit theme, and you're going to run like a command. You know, it's going to say like PHP something generate theme something something, and at some point it's going to say like you can even base it off of Olivero or Claro or whatever theme support that. But what I'm really excited about is I'm going to take this menu work, and I want to put that into the starter kit theme because people are going to use that. People are, you know, so even though they're going to style it differently, like this JavaScript and this stuff that we put in there, I want this to be used on like not just people's blogs like Olivero is going to be used for. I want like large websites that get tens of millions of views per day to have hyper accessible menu systems, because menu systems are extremely complicated, as you can see this right here, but you would argue that they're like the most important part of a website when navigating, you know? So yeah, that's what I'm excited about. This is me, so thank you. And I have no clue how much time I have left, but I am happy to take questions. Thank you. And it looks like I have 11 minutes for questions. Go ahead.
So you mentioned a little bit about having fallbacks from JavaScript and not.
Yeah.
What sort of fallbacks does Olivero use?
Well, I will show you. So I have no clue if my internet's going to work, and I'll try tethering really quick too. So let's go into here. Let's go to Drupal 10 just because. Like I said, I have no. All right. So here we are with. This is kind of normal Olivero right here. You can see at mobile we have this. So I have this little. This will disable JavaScript right here. So now JavaScript is not loaded, and you can kind of see how it works. So we're using regular CSS hover states to do this, and then if you're tabbing through, it uses focus within. You don't have an option to kind of tab around it anymore, but at least you can get to all the content. But you're thinking, well, how does that work with mobile? So mobile, we have a special style sheet that loads in a no script tag, and what it does is it does a bunch of like really weird things, and it kind of just pulls the menu system right up above like that, because the disclosure button isn't really going to work well at mobile. So we just have it right there, and it'll work. Go ahead, Susan. I know, like, holy cow. That's a really good question. Like, the umami stuff is beautiful, and umami is like, if y'all don't know what umami is, it's an install profile, and it installs default content, like a bunch of recipes and stuff. And it's like really neat because it has pre-configured views to show these recipes. It has things like cards, and it has content types built out with like relationships. And what that is that enables someone like Suzanne here, who's demoing it to a potential client, to say, hey, look, do you see how this works? This is how it works. You can kind of reverse engineer it pretty easily. Like, honestly, like umami, like Olivero is kind of meant to support like kind of everything. Umami is not, which is good. And umami is more of almost a real use case. But that being said, like, I don't know if umami has secondary menus, but if not, like, it would be fairly straightforward to take some of this code, retrofit it into there, screw around with the CSS, and make it look really nice. I would honestly help with that. I wouldn't have a problem with that, obviously. That being said, I even with Olivero looking like really, really great, in my humble opinion, there's still a very big use case and need for the umami profile. Go ahead.
With that in mind, would it be more beneficial to extrapolate the actual styling and the JavaScript and everything into another module within core that could be reusable within the various different views and third parties?
Yeah, I thought about like even like doing like a contrib module with that, but to tell you the truth, it just comes down like to time and effort. You know, like all my efforts going into this, and then of course I have like life and stuff like that. I don't know if it should be a core module, but like this. That's the type of stuff I do want to get into that theme generator. If you think it should be a core module, that could be an interesting conversation to have, and we could have that. But off the top of my head, giving it a good like 10 seconds of reasoning, I think that should still belong in the theme layer. But I could probably be convinced otherwise. Go ahead.
How much else is there in the Olivero theme? Is the menu like 50% of the work or more?
Oh, it was a significant part. I would say like the menu was probably, I would maybe call it like 20 to 30%. I don't know about 50 though. But there's obviously a lot that goes into this. The menu was a lot of work, honestly, and that's why I'm talking about it. Like I wanna shine the spotlight on this. I want people to like be able to look at this and be like, this kicks ass. Like this is awesome, and we're gonna use this, and we can use this to shine the light on Drupal, to say like Drupal's beautiful, it's accessible, it's wonderful, and that story needs to be told. Outside of the menu system, like there's like, I would say coordination with everybody is difficult too. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious, when you're talking about like some of the big modules that people use, who's in charge of the integrations? If I wanted to, instead of using the core search there, I wanted to use like search API.
Yeah.
Still wanted that drop down?
Yeah, we had opened up an issue earlier, and we kicked it over to this search API issue queue, and then they kicked it back, and I was like, eh. Like my thought process is, I would love, first of all, I don't have like all the backend expertise. I could write PHP, but then I would want someone to review it, before I introduce another security vulnerability. But I would love to collaborate with them and say like, hey, it would be fairly straightforward for a module to say Olivero is the theme, to know Olivero is a theme, and say if this, then load this template, and maybe load these styles. And I personally don't know the maintainer of the search API that's active or whatnot, but like I would love to collaborate because I want people to use this, and I want things to just work. I want it to be like my iPhone. I want to turn it on. I don't want to have to worry about moving stuff around, Go ahead.
I think a lot of us have had the same thought as you, that wouldn't it be great if Drupal had a more modern theme? So what gave you the nerve to go ahead and do that?
Yeah. So this is a really good question, because I've been involved in the Drupal community for a very long time, and I didn't have the nerve for a while. So I'll tell that story pretty quick. So like part of it is like I had like kind of a personal relationship with some of the core committers, and I knew this. I used to work at Lullabot, which is a fantastic agency, and I used to be a co-host of the podcast, and we would have these people on talking about things like that. And so like it was actually last DrupalCon. This is like the DrupalCon Seattle, and this is the benefit of getting in person, because you can have these. And we were hanging out, I think, with like Angie Byron and Larry Escala, and we were at a hotel, and I was like, is anybody working on this? Because if not, this is bullshit. and they were like, no, but you should. And I was with a coworker, and I was like, yeah, maybe, that'd be cool. And so my coworker Putra brought this up maybe a month later. She was like, hey, we could do this. And like working at Lullabot, like Lullabot has a lot of resources and a lot of smart people. So and I am very also like, I will bug people till they do what I want, So I reached out to our design team, because for me, design is the hardest part. And I said like, hey, will y'all be interested in this? And it was like an emphatic yes. They wanted to. And so we like, all right, well, what would this look like? What would this look like? And we established this whole, say like, all right, who are our stakeholders? Let's do a design, And at that point, we did a Drupal ideas issue queue, which kind of like put it out to the community. This is what it's going to look like. And of course, the community was like, heck yeah, we definitely want this. And at that point, it was just a matter of kind of execution. One thing that I am really proud of, and I talked about this to other initiatives, is the core committer that I've been working with most is Larry Escala, who works for Acque. He lives in Finland. He's a wonderful person. We started doing this thing, what I like to call mini sprints, where I would like reach out to him, and I would say, hey man, you got 3 hours in the next couple weeks? And he'd be like, yeah, I could do Friday the 23rd, starting at 8 in the morning, And I'd be like, all right, we put it on our calendars. And so what I would do is I would bug people, and I would get a list of issues into RTBC, and we would work through those on a Zoom call, and it worked out really well. There was one day we got like 7 things committed. Most days we would maybe commit 1, but we would always make progress. And so we were able to move a lot more rapidly than a lot of other initiatives, which in my opinion, I still don't think we moved quick enough. I think there's some issues, and I've talked about those. But I'm really proud of that idea, and if you all, like personally in this room, say, I want to do this, and I have resources to bring to bear on this. You come talk to me. I will introduce you. I will, like, you know, pull someone's ear and bring them in. Hey, come talk to this person, you know. This person will make it happen. Like, talk to me about that, because I want to enable. There are people in this room, I guarantee, that can do this, but you just need to, getting started is the hardest part. Go ahead, Marky.
So you say Olivero's not ready to be a parent thing. How would I take that menu out of Olivero using my sub theme?
Oh, it'd be a real pain in the ass. Like it's not built for it right now. So like you could easily grab the JavaScript. That would work pretty straightforward. The navigation is fairly well componentized. I did a good job with it, so you could do that. I actually did this on the Florida DrupalCamp website, which is, Florida DrupalCamp, by the way, is the best DrupalCamp in the whole world. But so it's possible. If you have particular questions, maybe ask for me, but I can't tell you just to do this, that, and the other, because honestly, you got to kind of look through it, grab stuff, see what breaks, grab something else, and then delete some code over here and all that type of stuff. How much time do I got? Yeah, that's about it. Anything else before last time? Last call? All right, thank you.